And now we're going to do what we often do on this show, and that is to take a closer look at some of the diverse religious communities living here in the Holy Land. Messianic Jews believe in Jesus as the Messiah, and yet they still retain some Jewish customs. Joining us to talk more about this community is Cantor. He's an Israeli Messianic Jew and a member of Glory of Yeshua community in Tel Aviv. Ron, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I would love if you could kind of tell our viewers, explain to our viewers a little bit about what it means to be a Messianic Jew. You know, how much of it is Jewish, how much of it is Christian?
Well, all of it is. Both. You have to understand that the first believers in Jesus were all Jewish. There was nobody running around in the first century saying, I'm a Christian. The names Peter, John the Baptist, Paul the Apostle, these were all Jews. In fact, Paul was a Jewish rabbi, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, who became convinced that Jesus, Yeshua, as we call him, was the Messiah. So all of the early followers of Yeshua were all Jewish. And if you had walked up to them and said, well, now that you're a Christian, you're no longer Jewish, they would have thought you were not. They would not have known what you were talking about. They were Jews who found the Messiah.
Right, except that in the ancient world, Jews at that time didn't conceive of God in a human body, in a person, so that would have made a distinction between Jews and
right.
Christians.
There was a lot that they didn't expect. They didn't expect that a Messiah was going to die. But after he rose from the dead, they began to look in the prophets. Isaiah 53 speaks of a Messiah figure who would come to Israel, be rejected. He would take on the sins of Israel, die for those sins, and then rise to light of life again. If you actually look at that, Yeshayahu Nun Gimel, Isaiah 53, next to the life of Jesus, it's amazing.
Right. That is one of the kind of proof texts that Christians use, which we won't get into the fights that the rabbis and the arguments the rabbis bring up to dispel it. We don't have time today, but I am curious about this community, how big it is, and what it's like to live in Israel, you know, a community that by and large rejects Messianic Jews.
Sure. Well, it can be tough. There have been some difficulties throughout the year. I have a friend whose son was on Purim, opened up a Purim gift package, as we like to send to each other, and it turned out to be a bomb for his father, and unfortunately he opened it up and he nearly died. It was a miracle that he lived. So that's probably the worst extreme. For the most part, you know, I live in Tel Aviv, and as you know, Tel Aviv is a very liberal city. I don't experience really any resistance. In fact, I probably get along better with most Tel Avivians than the Orthodox Jewish community does. Jerusalem's a bit more strict, as you know, but I would say everyone in the Messianic Jewish community, they consider themselves Israeli. They consider themselves Jewish. My children were in the IDF. All of our children, just like everyone else, as they go and they fight for the country, Yom Ha'atzmaut, we celebrate Zionism. We love the country.
And what about the Sabbath or the laws of keeping kosher or some of the other holidays? Do you celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the New Year? Do you celebrate Yom Kippur or Hanukkah or Purim?
We celebrate everything in the Bible. So Rosh Hashanah in the Bible is actually called Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, and absolutely we celebrate it. On Yom Kippur, it's a little bit different because we're not fasting for the forgiveness of our sins. Again, we don't have time to go into it, but the focus in Yom Kippur is actually the death of a sacrificial animal for the sins of the people. We focus on the fact that Yeshua died for us. Sukkot, absolutely. Hanukkah, even though it's not in the Bible, Yeshua, Jesus, celebrated Hanukkah. It's in John 10. So absolutely we celebrate Hanukkah and all the April feast, spring feast as well.
And we're now in the midst of Passover. So how do Messianic Jews celebrate Passover, or do they?
They do. In fact, it's probably our most significant holiday. Yeshua died and rose from the dead during the Passover season. The Last Supper, as we call it, we know the painting of Leonardo da Vinci, that is a Seder meal. Jesus says, I long to celebrate the Passover with my disciples. So they go to an upper room. I was just there this morning in Jerusalem with the tour group, and they go into this upper room and they eat the Passover meal together. It's after that he's arrested, he's crucified, and then on that Sunday is actually the day that you would bring, according to Leviticus, the first fruits offering. He rises from the dead on the first fruits. So for all the early Messianic Jews, Passover was the most powerful holiday. And then later on, in fact, there was no such thing as Easter for centuries. Sadly, Constantine, who became the emperor of Rome, he turned Christianity into a political force.
That's right, in the 4th century.
In the 4th century, and he outlawed Passover. Christians used to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus using Passover.
Does that mean that Constantine gets credit for helping create Easter?
It was probably happening already before that. He certainly gets credit for outlawing Passover.
Right. So are you also celebrating Easter?
I don't. You know, I didn't grow up with Easter. I didn't grow up with Christmas. I don't have a problem with anybody who celebrates those holidays. I didn't go hunting for Easter eggs. I didn't know Easter Bunny and Santa Claus.
Do some Messianic Jews celebrate Christmas and Easter, or it's less common?
You have to realize that some are in mixed marriages. They married, you know, it's not always easy. I'm really blessed. I found an Israeli Messianic Jewish beautiful woman, and my father actually said, you have to marry this girl. I know that she believes in Jesus, but at least she's Jewish. But I didn't know if I'd ever find another Jewish girl or a Jewish girl who believed in Yeshua. So you have mixed marriages, and many of them, they grew up with these holidays, but there's others who they say, you know what, that's not a part of who I am, and they don't celebrate.
How was your personal journey, and how did your family respond?
It was hard. It was real hard.
Your family, they're Jews.
Both of my parents are Jewish. I did Ancestry.com, and I was expecting to find something new and exciting, and it just said European Jew, Ashkenazi, all the way back. So no real surprises, but yeah, my parents are Jewish. And when I became a believer in Yeshua, they thought it was a phase. I was a phase-oriented ADHD child, and okay, Ronnie's going through another phase. And it was difficult when they realized that it wasn't a phase, that it was a life-altering moment for me. And the first few years were really hard. But when they saw, I married an Israeli, I'm raising my kids Jewish, we honor the Sabbath, we live as Jews, not just as a gimmick to say, hey, look, we're Christians pretending to be Jews. We are genuinely Jewish believers in Yeshua. That meant a lot to them.
Right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me, Ron. We're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. So much more coming up for you here on the Holy Land Uncovered. Stay with us.